The sun blazed mercilessly over the city, its heat bouncing off the asphalt like waves of fire. The expressway was alive with the roar of speeding cars, the honking of impatient drivers, and the hurried footsteps of pedestrians rushing to their destinations. Just in front of Region International Holdings, a woman in a wheelchair sat near the curb, her frail hands gripping the armrests as she watched the crowd pass her by. She had been sitting there for almost an hour, watching the steady stream of people heading toward Region International Holdings. She had seen their eager faces, their neatly pressed suits, and the determined way they clutched their files and resumes, hopeful job seekers. Desperate to prove themselves, anxious to secure a future. She knew today was a big day. The company was holding interviews, and from the way they rushed past her, it was clear nothing else mattered, not even her. A truck sped by, sending a gust of hot air against her face. She squeezed her eyes shut, then opened them again. She had to try. Clearing her throat, she raised a trembling hand. "Please," she called out to a passing young man. "Can you help me cross the road?" The man, dressed in a navy blue suit, barely spared her a glance. He adjusted his tie, quickened his steps, and disappeared through the company gate. She turned to a group of 2 women and a man, all discussing something in hushed, excited voices. "Excuse me," she tried again. "Can someone help me cross?" One of the women, a tall lady in a fitted black dress, slowed down. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, the woman seemed to consider it. Then she turned away. "Let's hurry," the other woman urged. "They'll close the gate soon." And just like that, they were gone. The woman in the wheelchair exhaled slowly. She watched as one by one, they walked past her. Some ignored her completely. Some hesitated, their gazes flickering in her direction before they moved on, unwilling to spare a second for a stranger. She saw a man in a white shirt and black trousers glance at her briefly before adjusting the folder under his arm and hurrying away. She saw a lady in high heels pause for the tiniest second before shaking her head and muttering, "Not today," under her breath. She saw another man slow down, frown, and then look around as if hoping someone else would step in before he turned and walked away. One after another, they passed, and with each rejection, the weight on her heart grew heavier. She was used to being ignored, but today, something about it stung differently. She adjusted her position in the wheelchair, shifting slightly to ease the ache in her back. The traffic on the road was relentless, cars speeding past, drivers too impatient to slow down. Crossing alone was impossible. She needed help, and yet no one was willing to give it. The minutes dragged on, more applicants arrived. More applicants walked past her, some didn't even notice her. Some pretended not to. Her throat felt dry, her hands trembled slightly. But she refused to give up. Taking a deep breath, she tried one last time. "Please," she said, her voice almost lost in the chaos of the city. "Can someone help me?" No one stopped, and as she sat there, watching the flood of people pouring into the company, she couldn't help but wonder, had the world truly lost its kindness? The woman in the wheelchair swallowed hard, her throat dry from calling out to strangers who wouldn't stop. She watched as the last wave of applicants hurried toward the company gate, their minds set on the job interview ahead. She had lost count of how many people ignored her. Some had looked directly into her eyes and walked away. Others had pretended she didn't exist. It was a cruel thing to be invisible in a world that only saw what it wanted to. She was about to give up when, finally, someone stopped. A young woman, dressed in a simple navy blue blouse and black skirt, turned toward her. Her expression was one of concern, not irritation or indifference. "Ma'am, do you need help?" the girl asked, taking a step closer. The woman nodded quickly. "Yes, please. I just need to cross the road." The girl moved instantly, her hands already reaching for the wheelchair handles. But before she could take another step, a hand grabbed her wrist, pulling her back. "Adeline, what do you think you're doing?" She turned to face her boyfriend, Kelvin. His brows were furrowed, his lips pressed into a thin line of frustration. "I'm helping her," Adeline said, her voice firm. Kelvin scoffed. "You're joking, right? You want to waste time on this when the interview is about to start." Adeline hesitated. The interview. She had spent weeks preparing for this opportunity. Her father was sick. Her mother was struggling to keep food on the table. The weight of responsibility had fallen on her shoulders. She needed this job. But as she looked down at the woman in the wheelchair, frail, vulnerable, and desperate, she couldn't bring herself to walk away. Kelvin's grip on her wrist tightened slightly. "Adeline, listen to me. You can't afford to be late." Look around. Did anyone else stop? No. because they know what's important. Crossing this road won't be easy with her. Adeline's heart pounded in her chest. She did know what was important. Her father needed medicine. Her family needed stability. She had prayed for this interview and begged God for a chance to prove herself. And now, standing here, she was faced with a choice. Her future or her conscience. She looked at Kelvin, her eyes pleading. It'll only take a few minutes. Kelvin let out a bitter laugh. A few minutes could cost you this job. Don't be foolish. If you don't take care of yourself first, who will? Adeline clenched her fists. Kelvin had always been practical. He believed in survival, in doing what was necessary. But was being selfish the only way to survive? She turned back to the woman, who had been watching their exchange silently. "Ma'am," Adeline said, her voice softer now. "Are you sure it's just across the road?" The woman nodded. "Yes, my house is nearby." Kelvin sighed loudly, running a hand through his hair. "I can't believe this," he muttered. "Fine. Do whatever you want, but don't come crying to me when you lose this opportunity." And with that, he let go of her hand and stormed off toward the company gate. Adeline took a shaky breath, pushing away the fear gnawing at her. Then, without another thought, she moved behind the wheelchair and said, "All right, let's get you across." Adeline gripped the wheelchair tightly as she wheeled the woman toward the edge of the busy expressway. The heat was unbearable, making sweat bead along her forehead and trickle down the back of her neck. Cars zipped past with terrifying speed, their engines roaring like wild beasts. The wind from their movements sent her skirt fluttering and almost knocked her off balance. She took a deep breath and tried to wave down a car. Nothing. Another vehicle sped past, its tires screeching slightly as it swerved to avoid a pothole. The gust of air made her flinch, but she stood her ground. She raised her hand again. The next car didn't even slow down. Neither did the next. She turned to the woman in the wheelchair, her heart pounding. "This might take a while," she admitted. The woman gave a small nod, her face unreadable. "Maybe you should go. You'll be late." Adeline bit her lip. A part of her wanted to listen. A part of her wanted to turn around and run to the company gate before it was too late. But then, she imagined, if she was struggling to cross the road, standing on her 2 feet, fully capable of running when she found an opening, what about the woman in the wheelchair? How did she expect this woman to do it alone? Her stomach twisted. She couldn't leave. She forced a smile. "Don't worry, ma'am. We'll get across." She tried again. She stepped forward slightly, waving both hands in the air, hoping at least one driver would have a little compassion. A bus approached at full speed, honking loudly. She jumped back instinctively, gripping the wheelchair tighter. More cars followed, each one speeding past like they had somewhere more important to be. The sun burned hotter. Her hands trembled slightly from gripping the wheelchair so hard. Her heart pounded with frustration. Why won't they stop? The woman remained silent, watching Adeline as she struggled. Minutes passed. Adeline wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. The air smelled of burning rubber and exhaust fumes. Then finally an opening. "Hold on," she told the woman. She took a deep breath, braced herself, and pushed the wheelchair forward. She moved as fast as she could, careful not to lose her grip. The wheels rolled smoothly over the pavement, but her heart clenched with every step, fearing another car might appear out of nowhere. By the time they reached the other side, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The woman lifted a hand and pointed. "That's my house." Adeline followed her gaze and saw a small, neat-looking bungalow just a few meters away. She nodded. "All right, let's get you there." The short walk to the house was easier. The street was quiet, lined with trees that offered some shade. When they reached the entrance, the woman turned to her. "Thank you, my dear." Adeline smiled. "You're welcome." She turned back toward the expressway. Now, she had to cross again. She stepped onto the curb, squinting against the harsh sunlight, and waited. A car whizzed past, then another, and another. She raised her hand to wave, but the drivers didn't even glance in her direction. The heat pressed against her, making her blouse stick to her back. She tried stepping forward slightly. Maybe if they saw her closer, they would stop. But they didn't. She clenched her fists, frustration boiling inside her. She needed to get back. The interview was still happening, and she had already wasted too much time. But the road wouldn't give her a chance. She swallowed hard, watching the endless line of cars rushing past. Then, finally, a small gap. Her muscles tensed. This was it. With a deep breath, she sprinted forward. The wind roared in her ears, the sound of tires screeching making her heart jump. But she didn't stop. She ran, her legs moving as fast as they could, her breath coming in quick, sharp gasps. And just as the next car sped toward her, she reached the other side. She stopped, her chest heaving, sweat trickling down her spine. For a moment, she stood there, catching her breath. Then she turned toward Regent International Holdings. The gates were still open. She had made it back. But had she made it in time? Adeline ran. Her legs burned, her chest heaved, but she pushed forward, her breath coming in quick, desperate gasps. The heat of the sun bore down on her, making her skin sticky with sweat, but she didn't stop. The massive gates of Regent International Holdings stood tall before her, her only hope left. She reached them and her heart sank. The gates were locked. Her hands flew to the metal bars, gripping them tightly as she peered inside. The large courtyard was filled with people. The interview was still going on, but she was stuck outside. No, 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 she muttered, shaking the gate. She turned frantically, searching for the security guard. Excuse me, please, can you open the gate? The guard, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, barely spared her a glance. Interview's already started, he said flatly. No more entries. Adeline's stomach twisted. She had missed it. All because she had stopped to help. Her eyes stung with inch tears. She had sacrificed her chance, her one chance to change her family's fate. And now it was gone. She slumped against the gate, her fingers trembling. And then, a voice, low, mocking, and all too familiar. Well, 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 look at this mess. Adeline's breath hitched. She turned her head and saw Kelvin standing on the other side of the gate, hands tucked casually into his pockets. His face was twisted into an amused smirk. You're so stupid, Adeline, he said, shaking his head. I warned you. I told you not to waste your time. But no, you just had to be the saint, didn't you? Adeline felt every eye turn toward her. People inside the company's premises had paused what they were doing, watching with curiosity. Some were whispering, others smirking. Kelvin stepped closer, gripping the gate bars and leaning in. You never listen, always trying to be a hero. And now look where that got you, locked out, rejected. And guess what? You'll never get another chance like this. His words sliced through her like a blade. She clenched her jaw, forcing herself to stay silent. But Kelvin wasn't done. You embarrassed me, Adeline, he continued, his voice dripping with disgust. Do you know how ridiculous you looked? Running around, sweating like a fool, trying to save a crippled woman instead of saving your future. Adeline's nails dug into her palms. The humiliation was unbearable. And you know what? Kelvin's smirk widened. I don't date idiots. We're done. This relationship is over. Adeline's breath hitched. She didn't know what to process first, the fact that she had lost her dream job or the fact that her boyfriend had just broken up with her in front of strangers. Her body trembled. She had never felt so small, so pathetic. The weight of everything crashed onto her chest. And then, she saw her. A girl, slim, beautiful, dressed in a tight-fitting blouse and pencil skirt, casually walked up to Kelvin. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around his waist. Adeline's stomach twisted painfully. Had they known each other before, or had they just met today? Had Kelvin already moved on, or had he been waiting for an excuse? The girl whispered something into Kelvin's ear, making him chuckle. Then, without even sparing Adeline another glance, he turned and walked away, his new companion clinging to his side. Adeline stood frozen. Her legs felt weak. The world spun around her. People were still watching, some whispering, others laughing. She had lost everything, and she didn't even know which loss hurt more. Adeline remained rooted to the spot, her legs feeling as heavy as stone. The sounds around her, the murmurs, the passing footsteps, the faint honking of cars in the distance blurred into nothingness. All she could hear was the echo of Kelvin's cruel words. You embarrass me, Adeline. We're done. The sharpness of his voice still rang in her ears, each word a dagger twisting deeper into her chest. She had loved him. Adeline let out a slow, shaky breath, trying to steady the whirlwind inside her. If he had loved her, he would have stood by her. If he had respected her, he wouldn't have humiliated her in front of strangers, laughing at her pain like it meant nothing. She felt the sting of unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. No, she wouldn't cry over a man who was never hers to begin with. Instead, she whispered under her breath, her voice barely audible even to herself. Thank God the relationship hadn't lasted. Thank God she had seen his true colors before it was too late. If it took losing Kelvin to remind her of her own worth, then maybe, just maybe, she hadn't lost anything at all. Her fingers loosened from the gate, her heart heavy but resolved. She was about to turn away, to leave this place and never look back. And then she saw her. Adeline's breath caught in her throat, her body going still. Walking toward her, with slow, deliberate steps, was a woman. Not just any woman. The woman in the wheelchair. Adeline's eyes widened, her pulse quickening. It was impossible. The frail, helpless woman she had struggled to push across the busy road. The woman whose arms had trembled as she clung to her wheelchair, her voice weak, pleading for help. That same woman was now approaching her, her posture tall, her steps confident, her presence commanding. No wheelchair, no helplessness. She walked with the kind of grace that drew attention without effort. Employees stepped aside as she passed, their murmurs barely concealed. Her outfit was nothing like the worn-out clothes she had been wearing earlier. She was dressed in an elegant deep blue suit that hugged her form with quiet sophistication. A gold bracelet gleamed on her wrist, and her sleek black heels clicked against the pavement with every step. The woman didn't just belong here. She owned the space around her. Adeline's mind raced, confusion tightening around her like a vice. How was this possible? Her throat went dry as the woman stopped a few feet away, tilting her head slightly, her dark eyes unreadable. Adeline recognized her instantly, but now, she wasn't sure she truly knew who she had helped. Adeline's heart pounded against her ribs as she stood there, her body rigid with shock. The same woman she had helped cross the road stood before the gate of Regent International Holdings. But she didn't glance at Adeline. She didn't offer a knowing look or a subtle smile of recognition. She acted as though Adeline was just another stranger. For a brief, painful moment, Adeline wondered if she had imagined it all. Maybe this wasn't the same woman. Maybe exhaustion was playing tricks on her mind. But before she could spiral deeper into doubt, the woman turned slightly toward the security guard and spoke in a firm, commanding voice. Open the gate for her. The gate creaked as it unlocked, and the guards stepped aside. Adeline blinked. For a moment, she was too stunned to move. Why was the woman letting her in? She hadn't taken the interview. She had missed her chance. There was no reason for her to be here, but before she could second-guess herself, her feet moved on their own. She stepped through the gate, her heart pounding, the whispers of those around her filling the air. Kelvin's eyes widened when he saw her inside, but almost instantly, his expression shifted into one of indifference. He wasn't worried. The interview had already ended. Whatever reason Adeline had for coming in now, it wouldn't change the fact that she had lost her chance. He smirked slightly and strolled toward her, stopping just inches away. His voice was low, but laced with mockery. So what's the point of coming in now? The interview is over. Did you think walking through that gate would magically get you a job? Adeline clenched her hands into fists, refusing to let him see how much his words stung. The truth was she didn't know why she was inside. She had been stopped at the gate earlier. The security guard had turned her away. And now, suddenly, she had been called in. She had no explanation. So she remained silent. Kelvin let out a laugh. He tilted his head, his voice laced with amusement. You really are something else, Adeline. First, you throw away your chance to help some random woman. Now, you're standing here like you belong. Adeline said nothing, because she didn't have an answer. But then, the woman stepped forward, and when she spoke, her voice silenced every whisper in the air. A candidate has been chosen. Thank you everyone for believing in us. One day we will be so big to take you all, but today we need just one person. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Kelvin straightened slightly, his smirk widening. Finally, he muttered. He glanced at Adeline briefly before turning toward the woman, eager to hear the name. He had done well in his interview. He was confident. But then, the woman's next words shattered the air like glass. The girl who helped me today has been chosen. Silence. A suffocating, bewildered silence. Kelvin's smirk froze on his lips. Adeline's breath hitched. The other candidates exchanged confused glances, their faces darkening with disbelief. Then, as if reality had just dawned on them, they erupted into protests. Helped her? Where? The woman smiled. I was the woman in the wheelchair. Their palms went to their mouths, but then they talked. What? But she didn't even take the interview. This is unfair. We spend hours preparing, and she just walks in and gets the job. She didn't prove herself. Their voices overlapped, growing louder with every second. Adeline felt her head spin. She hadn't taken the interview. She hadn't even submitted her application properly. How was this possible? The woman heard their grumbling but remained unshaken. She took a slow breath, her gaze sweeping across the restless crowd before she spoke again. Her voice was calm, but firm. She did not help me because she was being evaluated. She did not help me because she thought there was a reward. She helped me because she has a heart that cannot turn away from someone in need. The murmurs died down. The weight of her words settled heavily on everyone. I did not interview her. She did not sit before a panel. But she has already proven something greater than any answer could show. The woman's gaze finally met Adeline's, and this time, there was recognition. A quiet, unspoken acknowledgement. I am giving her this job not because of what she wrote in a resume, but because of what she showed through her actions. Adeline felt her knees weaken. Everything felt unreal. She had come here hoping for a chance. She had lost that chance because she chose to help a stranger. And now, that very act of kindness had given her something she had never even dreamed of. The other candidates weren't happy, but they couldn't argue, because deep down, they knew. Not a single one of them had stopped. Not a single one had helped. They had all walked past a woman in need. And now, the woman they had ignored was rewarding the one person who had shown kindness. Kelvin swallowed hard. His confidence wavered for the first time. He turned to Adeline, his voice softer, hesitant. Adeline, listen. But she didn't. She didn't need to. Because at that moment, she finally understood. Kelvin had never valued her. He had never seen her for who she truly was. If he had, he would have been proud of her today. Instead, he had mocked her. And now, when he saw that she had received something he didn't, he wanted to crawl back. I was just trying to. Adeline turned away before he could finish. Kelvin stood there, dumbfounded, as she walked past him toward the woman who had changed everything. He had lost her. And this time, she wasn't looking back. Kelvin stood frozen, his hand slightly raised, as if reaching for Adeline. But she didn't look back. For months, she had believed in their relationship, convincing herself that Kelvin loved her. That he was just practical, not heartless. That he was realistic, not unkind. But now, standing here in this moment, she saw the truth clearly. Kelvin had never loved her, because love was not just in words, it was in actions. And today, he had shown her exactly who he was. The same man who had laughed at her, mocked her in front of strangers, and abandoned her over a simple act of kindness was now trying to worm his way back into her life the moment she gained something valuable. She had no space for such a person anymore, so she kept walking. Kelvin's lips parted slightly, as if to say something, but when Adeline moved past him without hesitation, his expression shifted into something unreadable. And then, the realization hit him. He had lost her. Truly, completely, irreversibly. The weight of his own selfishness bore down on him, and for the first time, he felt the sting of regret. But Adeline didn't care. Not anymore. She followed the woman inside the large office building, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. She barely registered the whispers around her, the wide-eyed stares of employees who watched her with a mixture of curiosity and confusion. Inside the grand lobby, the woman turned slightly, giving Adeline her first real chance to look at her. The difference was startling. This was not the same frail woman who had sat in a wheelchair at the roadside. She was poised, strong, and commanding. Her long, flowing gown was tailored to perfection, the deep emerald green fabric radiating elegance. Her hair, once hidden beneath a scarf, cascaded in thick, glossy waves over her shoulders. Everything about her spoke of authority. Adeline swallowed hard. She had assumed like everyone else that the woman was just another helpless individual in need. But now, standing in the heart of one of the biggest companies in the city, she realized just how wrong she had been. The woman turned fully to face her. "You're surprised." Adeline blinked, her lips parting slightly. I don't understand," she admitted. A small smile touched the woman's lips. "You thought I was just a poor woman in need of help, didn't you?" Adeline hesitated before nodding slowly. "I never imagined." She trailed off, struggling to find the right words. The woman's eyes softened, but her voice remained firm. "And yet, you helped me anyway." A lump formed in Adeline's throat. The woman clasped her hands behind her back and took a step closer. "Do you know how many people walked past me today?" Adeline did. She had watched them walk past. She had watched their eyes flicker with brief discomfort before they turned away, pretending not to see. Not a single one stopped. The woman continued, "Not until you." Adeline felt her pulse quicken. I didn't help you because I wanted something in return," she said quietly. The woman's gaze warmed. "I know. That is exactly why you deserve this." Adeline's breath caught. "This," she echoed. The woman gestured to the grand space around them. The job, Adeline. I am offering you the job. Adeline's eyes widened. But I didn't even go through the interview process. I didn't prepare, I didn't. The woman held up a hand, silencing her gently. The interview was never about answering questions in a boardroom. The real test happened outside, in a way none of them expected. You showed something no resume can ever fully capture: compassion. Tears burned the back of Adeline's eyes. She had spent weeks preparing for this interview, memorizing answers, practicing her posture, and rehearsing what to say. Yet, in the end, it wasn't her qualifications that got her here. It was her humanity, her willingness to help someone in need. Welcome to Regent International Holdings, Adeline, the woman said softly. Adeline exhaled shakily, her emotions overwhelming her. Thank you, she whispered. The woman placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. No, thank you. Adeline felt her chest tighten. Right now, she truly believed that good things could happen to good people. As she turned her head slightly, she saw through the glass doors. Kelvin was still standing outside, watching. His shoulders were slumped. His hands were shoved into his pockets. His face was unreadable. For a brief second, she felt a pang of sadness. Not because she missed him, but because she finally understood how small he was. He had chosen money over love, self-interest over kindness, and in doing so, he had lost something greater than he could ever realize. With one final glance, Adeline turned away from the past and stepped fully into her future. Adeline sat in the grand office, her hands still trembling slightly as she clutched the employment letter in her lap. She could hardly believe it. Only an hour ago, she had been standing outside that locked gate, humiliated, rejected, and utterly lost. Now, she sat across from the owner of the company, offered a position she had once dreamed about. The woman, Madame Eleanor, watched her with a knowing smile. I can see the doubt in your eyes, she said, leaning slightly forward. Adeline exhaled shakily. It just feels too good to be true, she admitted. Madame Eleanor's expression softened. I understand. Life doesn't always reward kindness immediately. More often than not, it repays it with pain, betrayal, and disappointment first. Adeline swallowed hard, thinking of Kelvin. But, Eleanor continued, when kindness does come full circle, it brings something far greater than anything selfishness can ever achieve. Adeline nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of her words. A soft knock interrupted them. A secretary peeked inside. Madam, the board members are ready. Eleanor sighed, then stood gracefully. You start tomorrow, Adeline. Go home, rest, and come back prepared to take this opportunity with both hands. Adeline stood as well, gripping her letter tightly. Thank you, Mom. I won't take this for granted. Eleanor smiled. I know you won't. As Adeline stepped out of the office, the weight of everything hit her. She had a job, a real, stable job. Her father wouldn't have to worry about medical bills anymore. Her mother wouldn't have to take on so many side jobs just to keep the family afloat. She had done it, not in the way she had imagined, but in a way that felt even more meaningful. She walked out of the building, her heart feeling light for the first time in months. And then she saw him. Kelvin stood by the gate, his expression unreadable. Adeline paused. For a brief second, the past flickered between them. The late-night conversations, the promises whispered in the dark, the love she had thought would last forever. But it was all an illusion. She knew that now. Kelvin took a hesitant step forward. Adeline. She shook her head. Don't, she said softly. Kelvin's jaw tightened. Look, I was angry, okay? I didn't mean half the things I said. You know me. Adeline smiled subtly. That's the problem, Kelvin. I do know you. She had seen who he was clearly, not as the man she had loved, but as the man who had never truly valued her. Kelvin exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. You're making a mistake, Adeline. Do you really think this job will change anything? You still need me. Adeline let out a soft laugh. No, Kelvin, you needed me, but I never really needed you. His face darkened. So, that's it. You're just going to walk away. Adeline looked at him one last time, her heart steady, her decision firm. I already have. And with that, she turned and walked away, stepping into a new chapter of her life.